Okay, so I want to talk about spinal extension today. I think when we um, have this slumpy existence that we all, the weight, just the weight, there's so much weight right now in so many different ways. And I think it's very easy um, to just have this downward collapsed kind of energy, and having that the values that lift our energy field upward and connect us to the heavens is a really powerful and important part of our energy body. But it's also a really important part of our physical body too, where the slumped posture, over time, we just start getting more and more curved. And the spine is not straight, as you guys know. It's got this beautiful curve, and it's built that way for a lot of beautiful reasons. When we walk, when we jump, when we hop, when we step, and this weight kind of transfers from the ground through our body, having curves along the way is a wonderful way of kind of creating that the force compression where we absorb force from the earth into our body. And it starts at our feet with our arches, this beautiful bounce that we have in the arches, but it travels up through all of our joints into our pelvis, all the way through our spine. And so the curves in our spine are beautifully built, perfectly built for being able to absorb the shock of transmission through the earth, and to help us along the way in all sorts of movement patterns. We have this incredible capacity to move in so many different ways through our spine. And if you've ever hurt your back, then how limiting when you are frozen in a section of your spine from pain or discomfort or whatever, how it limits your mobility on such profound levels. So the more we can care for our spine, the better. And the discs in between our vertebrae, when this is a generalization, but when we're 20 years old, they are 80% water. And when we're 80 years old, they're 20% water. So we're all kind of like in the middle there somewhere. And as the discs start to shrink, not only is this explain why we get a little shorter as we age, but same with the hunch that makes us shorter. But we lose that shock absorption capacity when our discs are not as plump with water as they once were. So all the more reason why we have to work to create that upward energy through our spine to give the discs a little space. So if you've ever made a mala strand and there's like the knot in between each bead, we want the discs to be like those little knots in between each vertebrae so that we're not rubbing bone on bone, which causes a lot of problems. So everything we're going to do in our practice today is going to be about spinal elongation. And then at the end, we might sit for a moment to just feel what that feels like. Remember, all of the asana practices were originally given as tools to be comfortable sitting in meditation. And I'm sure you've noticed that all the work that we do in our hips and in our body for our practice helps you sit at your desk or whatever, with good posture instead of slumping. So just notice how the spine can help us have good form. And then the last thing I want to say is that there's two different ways of extension, or not extension, but just moving in the spine. There's open chains and there's closed chains. And if you've not heard that term before, an open chain is when one point of contact is not touching the floor. So sitting is an open chain through the spine because our crown is not touching anything. Whereas other things like, and it doesn't have to necessarily be the head, it can be other limbs too. Another example of a closed chain would be standing with a forward fold holding our feet. So if we're holding our feet versus, in space with our spine, this is a closed chain. And usually closed chains are what make us round, because we have a lock point at the other end. So we're going to do both some open chain extension in the spine and some closed chain extension in the spine. And the closed chain extension is where you need to be uber careful, because when we have contact with one part of our body with another part of our body and we're not open in space, there's more force that can be transmitted, and forward folds in particular can be very trying on the spine when we are holding our feet or holding something and pulling ourselves in this closed chain, we lose the capacity for this free form of length through the spine. So we want to be extra careful when we're doing anything that's a closed chain to pay close attention to the movement of the spine. Okay, so I won't get any more technical than that, but let's just go ahead and find a good seat. And notice when you are up on something, so I hope you're up on something, you have the capacity to already feel the curves in your spine. So notice the pelvis, if you're sitting on a blanket or a block or a pillow or something or a chair, it doesn't matter what you're on, but having the sense that for a moment, rock forward and back on the pelvis so you can feel when you roll back, the low back rounds a little bit. And when you come forward, the low back arches a little bit. And already this contact with whatever surface we're touching, however our pelvis tends to land, deeply impacts where our spine sits. So find a sweet spot where your low back, so you can put your hand on your belly and your other hand on your back to kind of feel, and end up where you have a place in a very neutral pelvis and a neutral low back, so that you're not over dipped into an arch or over rounded in the lumbar spine. So once you find that place where you want to be, see if you are comfortable. First of all, is that a happy place for your body? Is it a familiar place to your body? And if not, maybe you have some work to do to try to access your neutral curves. So then travel upward. First ground. Ground into the pelvis. Feel a sense of weight through your legs. Sense of connection to the earth, yielding to the earth. So there is these forces of down, and then there's rebound up. So as you give yourself over, this yielding, giving yourself over to the earth, feel the energy rise back up through you. And when you do, try not to erase your curves. So when you feel that earnest desire to lift the spine, and you do that, what happened to the curves in your body? So see if you can have a little more softness, a little more subtleness to the upward energy moving through you. So you're not ramrodding upward like a tent pole. Okay, we want to have a little more softness than that, so that our curves are free, so that our discs are playful, that we are not rigid and hard. So once you travel upward all the way to the crown with this sense of curvy spaciousness, can you let the limbs kind of dangle just a little bit? And that's not to say you want your arms to feel like they're disconnecting, but feel how the shoulder blades sliding down the back gives a stability to the arm bones to let them relax. And maybe if the shoulder blades are just a little bit active, not squeezing, not pushing, just a little aware, can you feel the heads of the arm bones back, just a little moving, drawing back just a little bit, counteracting a little bit of this rounded, hunched posture that we tend to get. So let the shoulder blades dance on the rib cage instead of lock on the rib cage. Can you feel them move with your breath? Can you feel that the arm bones are not weighted forward, but they're just on your sides? Can you feel that your chest can be broad without pushing it forward and overwhelming the thoracic spine? So the thoracic spine should curve back just a little bit, not so much to the point of hunch, but we also don't want to erase it by pushing our chest forward and squeezing our shoulder blades on the back. This is not sustainable. This is not a posture that you can hold for a long time. So what can you melt? How can you feel that the shoulder blades are alive, breathing on the back? That you can feel the rib cage move on the inhale and move on the exhale. So the spine and the ribs and the shoulder blades are truly in a dance with each other on the breath. So a stability in the pelvis, a neutrality in the lumbar spine, a dance in the rib cage and the thoracic spine. And then where do you put your head? How do you complete the rest of your spine? This very important neck that holds a very important heavy head. Can you feel a sense of lightness? Where do you place your head that there's lightness, that it feels weightless? And the same with your neck. Some people push their throat back and lengthen their neck in the back and erase their curve. And some people slump their neck forward and collapse the base of their skull down toward their shoulders. So just see the middle way. And once you kind of have explored all parts of your spine, come into the big full forest of the spine now instead of little sections. Feel your breathing body. Feel your stable earth. Is your spine comfortable? Okay, let's place your palms at your heart and bow in. Offer an intention. How can the spacious, energetic expanse of a long spine serve what you need today? Everyone knows the feeling of collapse and slumped posture. And how, if we change that, how can that energy serve you best? Okay, let's release the hands and come onto your back. Okay. I'm going to change the lighting just so there's no glare from my window being open. I think that might be, I don't know if it's better or not, but that's what we're doing. So go ahead and find yourself on your spine. And already we're coming into a state of spinal elongation. That's an open chain. The floor doesn't create the closed chain here. And this is just one feedback mechanism. We have this open chain from crown to tail. So it's a beautiful place to feel the spine spread and grow. And also when we're horizontal to the, when we're on the ground, our discs have lost the compression of gravity upon them. So feel that as well, that there is no longer a compressive force downward on the spine, and enjoy the freedom of that. Stretch your arms overhead, lengthen, reach your left side, reach your right side, just come into the feeling of the body opening and breathing. And then bring the knees into the chest. Notice the back, how it rounded just a little bit by doing that, and the comfort that might come from a little stretch there. And just rock. So feel your spine rocking to and fro. And maybe you're just rocking the pelvis and the upper back is a little steadier. Maybe your whole body's rocking, including your head. So just experiment and see what feels nice. Obviously, the nervous system is deeply embedded in our spine. It is our spine, right? So let's also check in with not just the bony parts, not just the vertebrae, which is really what we're talking about in a lot of what I've said. But see if you can now feel the energy of your spine itself. So put your feet on the floor, arms can come out comfortably, and just visualize this beautiful spinal cord encased in these strong bones. We're so perfectly designed. And we have this ability to connect our brain to every cell in our body through this giant highway. I mean, obviously there's other nerves too, but there's this giant highway where these nerves branch out from the center to all of our body, innervating our movements, innervating our vital organs. So let's just take a moment to appreciate our nervous system and the house that it lives in. Our brain lives in our skull, our spine lives in our vertebrae. So let's just enjoy our bony house for a moment. This beautiful spinal column and the vertebrae that surround it.
And then let's stretch open, arms and legs to a starfish. Lengthen through your body, squeeze. Squeeze your muscles, squeeze anything you can find to squeeze, all the way down to your toes. And then bring your knees into your chest, pick up your head, feel the rounded spine, and squeeze again. Take a deep breath, and as you exhale, squeeze anything you have access to. Just waking up some of your muscles. And then release the head down, and let's go ahead and keep the right knee in, left leg long on the floor. Extend the spine, wiggle out the toes. See if you can feel the arches stretch in your feet. Let the bones widen and broaden. Feel some compression in the hip joint, in the knee joint. And then switch sides. Let's take the left knee in, right leg long on the floor. Give a good squeeze here. Feel the compression, feel the openness across the ankles and the feet. All right, and then go ahead and pick up the right knee. Let's open the knees out and bring them back in. Let's just kind of find our hips a little bit, see what the movement feels like there. And also notice as you move your knees, what's happening in the lumbar spine. Can you feel the change of shape in your pelvis and the change of shape in your lumbar spine as you move your knees in some different planes? So put your feet down for a moment, flat on the ground, and just feel the anterior and posterior tilt of the pelvis. So if you're not familiar with what that means, it's also another way to describe it is nutation and counter nutation. So remember that your sacrum is part of your vertebral column. So feel the top of your sacrum lift up off the floor and the tailbone tip down like a seesaw. This is called nutation. And then feel the top of your sacrum move down into the earth and the tailbone lift up off the floor. That's counter nutation. Otherwise, we often think about the movement of the pelvis instead of the movement of the sacrum. And so the corresponding movement of the pelvis is when we lift the top of the sacrum up, we go into an anterior tilt of the pelvis. And when we drop the top of the sacrum down and lift the tail, we go into a posterior tilt of the pelvis. So that's nutation and counter nutation. So just move your body that way a few times. Kind of feel how your pelvis and your vertebrae are connected right at your sacroiliac joints, a really important weight-bearing part of the body that transmits a lot of force from the ground into our spine. All right, now let's windshield wiper the legs a little bit. So feet are wide on the mat, maybe a little wider than your hips might be more comfortable, and just go left and right. And let's just start to already feel the response through the spine, that there's this beautiful capacity in the vertebrae to rotate, to extend, to flex, and to side bend. We have 4 primary movements of the vertebrae, and this is so amazing, right? That we can go in all these directions. Not only is it amazing that we can go in one direction at a time, but we can go in multiple directions at a time. For instance, bring your knees to your chest and feel the flexion in your spine. And at the same time as you flex, go ahead and drop your knees left and open your chest right. So here we are twisting, flexing in the lumbar spine and opening in our thoracic spine and twisting our neck as well. So enjoy and kind of marvel at the miracle of multi-plane movements in the spine. Inhale, lift your knees up. Let's bring our knees over to the other side. Take a deep breath, open the chest. Find the turn of your head. Marvel at your rotation. Marvel at your extension and your flexion. All right, and then inhale, come back up with your knees. Starfish one more time. Arms and legs come wide. Exhale, knees into your chest. Okay. All right, now arms down at your sides for this. We can do this with our arms over our head, but we're going to start with our arms down at our sides. We're going to pick our knees up and we're going to lift our legs straight up in the air. So now there's a little activity in our core, but notice that we're still in an open chain. The crown and the tail have no pressure against them, so we can stretch into space. Feel the stability through your core muscles. Such an important part of maintaining elongation in the spine is the support that our core can give our vertebrae. So just hang out here for a moment, breathe. Notice if your shoulder blades can still dance a little bit on the ribs or if they're trying to round. All right, and then keeping the knees bent now, we're gonna go from one knee in to the other knee in. And we're gonna do this slowly. Start, and let me back up for a minute. So let's start a little easier. Put your feet on the ground, okay? We're going to first just lift one knee up and put it back down. Wake up your psoas. So your psoas muscles are one of your prime low back stabilizers. So this is just a simple way to get them awake. So one knee in, try to keep everything as simple and stable through your your lumbar spine as you can, and make sure you're breathing. So every time you bring your knee to your chest, you're flexing your psoas muscle. See if you can sense it. This is the muscle deep, right along your spine, below your organs, attaches to the front of your vertebrae and all the way down to your femur bone. Okay, so now we're going to change the action to add just a little bit more effort into it. So our knees are going to come up now. Are you in a neutral lumbar curve? So try not to push your low back into the floor. There should be a slight hollow, just a slight hollow. And now we're going to tap our heel down toward the ground and lift it back up. So eccentric contraction of the psoas on the way down, concentric contraction of the psoas on the way up. Are you breathing? Can you stabilize from that deep, deep center? And if this is too hard, go back to the original heels down, lifting up instead of heels up, dropping down. Finding your breath. There's a lot more than just your psoas at play here. Your transverse abdominis is obviously kicking in too. All right, and then put your knees down onto the ground. Feet are flat. Imagine you have a tray on each knee with a wine glass on top of that tray. When your tray on your left knee, we're going to keep it there. Nothing's going to move. And we're going to try to slide the right tray off our knee by bringing the right knee out to the side. Drop your tray and then lift it back up. Okay? And now we're going to keep the tray stable on our right knee as we drop the tray on our left out to the side. So remember your tray on your opposite knee. So whatever knee is up with that wine glass, you want to be so stable on that side as you drop the other knee off to the side and slowly bring it back up again. One of the hardest things to do in a posture like this is to remember to breathe. So, breathing, when we think we're in lockdown mode through the core muscles, our breath can complicate that. So let's remember that we can utilize our muscles and breathe at the same time. Just go back and forth. This is very awakening for the iliacus and the psoas muscle. Notice if you're starting to get fatigued deep in the belly. I feel this in my low back too, the quadratus lumborum muscles, the deep low back muscles. Are you breathing? What's tense that doesn't have to be? Are your arms getting involved? Is your neck involved? All right, and then go ahead and relax. Pick up your knees and rock. And just let the deep low back muscles, your quadratus lumborum and your psoas, they're like two peas in a pod. They wrap around, they support the spine. They don't wrap around. They support the spine. The analogy, I'm sure you've heard me say before, think of the spine, the vertebrae, like a little baby tree, and the psoas on the front and the QL on the back are like the two stakes on the tree to keep it upright in a storm. Let's roll over onto our side and come up onto our hands and our knees. And you might feel fatigued from what we just did, so let's do some cat-cows. And once again, marveling at the beauty of your spine. Let's enjoy. The full extension of the vertebrae, the full roundedness of the spine, flexion of the vertebrae. And then let's add some other movements in. So do you want to side bend? Maybe turn and look out over your feet, let the hip drop off to the side. That might feel good through your spine. Perhaps some circles through your pelvis. To me, this is one of the best ways to free up a lot of tension in the quadratus lumborum, all the ligaments in your low back, is to just do some pelvic circles. And by pelvic circles, I mean, imagine that your tailbone is a paintbrush and you're painting circles on the wall behind you, not, just kind of using your belly as the paintbrush, and, your navel is painting circles on the floor, which is also very good. So let's do those now. If you haven't gone both directions with the with the wall paintbrush, then switch directions. But when you're ready, turn your paintbrush onto your belly button and draw some big circles on the floor. Okay, so simple things you can do in the morning if your spine is stiff. These are great movements for first thing when you wake up. And then after you've done a couple circles each direction, play. How do you want to get your neck, your ribs, your shoulder blades involved in the movement of your spine? Is there more fluidity, and kind of, instead of segmenting out, like I'm going to do this action and I'm going to do that action, can you feel that your whole spine has so much fluidity of movement? No matter what you're doing, breathe. And then let's find ourselves coming into child's pose, but do it with some nutation. So tailbone lifts to the sky, anterior tilt of the pelvis, and stretch your femur bones back. So you're maintaining your neutral lumbar curve as you come down into this pose. Okay, so feel the spine. See what it feels like to open yourself up in this way, to feel the movement of your breath traveling through. See what your rib cage feels like. And then let's take our side bend that we often do in the beginning of class. Walk the hands left. And of course, you're going to feel this big and broad in the rib cage and in the breath. So feel that for a couple of breaths. And then see what you feel right where the ribs meet the vertebrae. See if you can open up those little windows right in there, getting some space. And then walk over to the other side, taking your body over to the right, feeling that sense of big broadness across the rib cage and breath, but then also a little softness through the more subtle places. Can you open up the space where the ribs and the vertebrae meet? Find that joint. Okay, and then let's come back up onto all fours when you're ready. And let's find our twist. Inhale, reach the right arm up to the sky. Exhale and slide that shoulder down. Notice the space where the ribs and the vertebrae meet now. Breathe right there. See if you can puff up that joint as you inhale. Those joints, I should say, it's many joints, many ribs connecting to many vertebrae. And then inhale, reach that arm all the way back up. Place the hand down onto the ground and change sides. Lifting the arm up, exhale and sliding that arm through. Press your hand into the floor, be soft in your gaze. Find your breath, find those little spots, puff them up, puff the little joint up as you inhale. And inhale, reach that arm back up to the sky, place the hand down onto the ground. So flat back now, nice little bits of neutral curves, so we don't have to ramrod our spine. Take your right leg straight back behind you. Find your leg, find your glutes, find your hamstrings, find your inner thigh, hug toward the midline. And then when you're ready, stretch the left arm out in front of you. So this is a deep spinal stabilizing pose. It's so good for your spine. It's open chain. Your crown and tail and foot are not, and hand are not touching anything. So there's space to be had through your breath, and there's deep stability to be found along your spine. Feel that deep low back muscle. Feel your psoas muscle. Feel all the muscles along your spine supporting your vertebrae. And then let's go ahead and switch sides. Place the left hand down. Left leg comes up, right arm comes up. So shoulders and hips are square. See what it feels like to have that wrap around 360 around the torso. So, your psoas and your QL are very active, but so is your transverse abdominis. You have this deep layered, like paper mache layering around the spine, so that if you pop the balloon of the breath or anything else, there's still this structural support of all these muscles holding you in space. Okay, let's release that and find our way into dog pose. Spread out your hands, spread out your feet. Once again, our spine is pretty open here. There's a lot of length, a lot of capacity for length. We're not sitting on the floor to create a closed chain. We're not, we're still very open in our spine. So feel a sense of space. Feel a sense of breath. Can you dance the rib cage a little bit with the breath? Can you feel the connection of your thoracic spine to your ribs? Can you notice each vertebrae and try to, imagine that you're filling them up with a lot of, maybe water is your visual, maybe you want something a little bit more, typical, like gelatinous, because that's really what's there. But just imagine a plumping of the discs. All right, and then let's walk our feet forward. Come into Uttanasana. Bend your knees as much as you want. In order for the spine to get long in forward folds, we need to tilt the pelvis. So allow the pubic bone to pass through the inner thighs. See if you can lift the tailbone. Feel that nutation of the sacrum. As we're in an anterior tilt of the pelvis. Bend your knees as much as you need to cultivate that anterior tilt. And notice the spine. So for a moment, let's do it wrong. Posterior tilt your pelvis, tuck your tail, pull your tailbone toward your feet, and notice the tug of war. Now your sacrum and your spine are in opposition to each other. So this is a lot of tension on the vertebrae. So bend your knees, lift the tail, widen the sit bones, pass the pubic bone through. Remember, you can access the pelvis from the front, the back, the sides. There's so many ways to find the movement. Keep bending the knees. And now notice when you lift the sacrum up, can you feel the waterfall that the sacrum is following the spine instead of at a tug of war with the spine? So anytime you're bending forward, let your knees bend as much as you need to so the pelvis finds that action. It's not important to have the legs straight to try to touch the floor. Much more important to keep the integrity of the sacrum and the spine moving together. Inhale and lengthen through your spine now, halfway lift. So you can hold blocks or you can put your hands on your thighs. Whatever you're doing, feel this open chain. Your spine has so much room. There's nothing on either side of it to stop it. Feel the breath. And then exhale and melt back down. Knees bend again. Pelvis rolls over the femur bones. Inhale for a halfway lift. We're still in an anterior tip slightly, so feel the low back curve stay instead of round up. Extending the spine, femur bones back, soft knees. Exhale and melt one more time. Fold your knees a bit. Lengthen the spine. It's okay to round the thoracic spine a teeny bit, but just feel that there's length happening, that you're cascading toward the floor. Push off your feet. Rise up, reaching the arms to the sky. Open the chest. Lengthen upward. Feel that upward energy now. Yield into the earth and feel the rebound through your spine. Then bring your arms wherever you want them to be. And let's bounce a little bit. Okay, so you don't have to leave the floor. You can if you want to hop and jump, but just notice the rebound through your spine. So all these shock absorbers of our arches, our ankles, our knees, our hip joints, our sacroiliac joints, all the way up through the spine. Can you feel it all the way to your crown? This is good for you. Okay, and then find stillness and just notice the zing, the echoes in your body from bouncing. Find your breath, and then notice, did any of that hurt? Do you have joints anywhere along the way that don't like to shock absorb well?
finding your breath. Now let's find the core here a little bit. Deep inhale, body expands. As you exhale, condense your core in. Feel that wrap around 360 through your torso. And we're going to start accessing the psoas again. Stand on your right foot. Be ever so slow so that when you lift your knee, try to lift it like a drawbridge from the psoas muscle instead of, just from your glutes, or there's so many other muscles that want to take over. See if you can let the lever of your psoas be the primary mover here. And then feel the open chain through your spine. Lift up. Breathe. Bring your arms up too if you want. Deep inhale, deep exhale. And then put that foot down onto the ground. Second side, root, yield. And then when you're ready, instead of just flying the knee up really fast, try to slow down so you can feel the psoas muscle do the work of lifting your knee up. Find your core strength. Lift through your spine. Maybe your arms come up as well. Breathe here. Notice if you're trying to do this with other muscles. Notice if your back wants to do it or your inner thigh wants to do it. See what other muscles are like. I got this. If the psoas is sleepy. And then release your foot down. Inhale, arms up to the sky. Take a little bit of a back bend. Lean back, open your belly. Exhale and fold in half. Inhale for a halfway lift. The spine grows again. Exhale and melt. Step your left foot back. Come to a lunge. Right foot is forward. Find your breathing here. Extending the spine. So notice there's so much extension to be had. We have this beautiful open chain in the spine. Reach back to your back heel. Open the psoas in that back leg. Find your breath. And then start to find some straight legs. Move here. Notice if you really work towards straightening that front leg, do you lose the length of your spine? Keep moving and breathing. What can you do to keep the extension through your spine as you move? And then come to a full lunge. See what it feels like to hug your feet toward each other a little bit. So even though you're extending the psoas in the back leg, that little bit of flex stretch within it, and then reach upward. Find your breath. See what's holding you here. Can you feel your core? Can you feel your psoas? Feel your breath. Lean back if you feel good. If you want to have some extension through your spine, find it. Instead of just length, can you feel the little bit of a back bend? Open things up. Exhale and release. Walk your back foot forward. Inhale for a halfway lift again. Exhale and melt back down. Step your other foot back. Left foot forward, right foot back. Come into a lunge. Feel the openness through the hip flexors of that back leg. That's your psoas. Stay connected with the engagement of your psoas on your front leg. Feel the spine grow. Shoulder blades are dancing on the back with breath. And then when you're ready, start to move. Maybe your legs like to go all the way straight. Maybe they don't. When you start to feel that you're rounding the spine, what does that feel like? Is it healthy and good for you? Or are you having a tug of war with your sacrum and the rest of your spine again? So see what feels nice. What kind of range of motion helps you maintain the elongation of your spine? All right, then we're going to come into a lunge and find our way up into crescent lunge. So already, do you sink? Do you dip into the low back? Do you compress? Can you find the upward energy? Even if that means you come out of the lunge a little bit, can you feel that upward elongation through the spine? Put your arms where you want them to be. Once you have the elongation of the spine and the support of the core for that, if you want to lean back, go for it. And if that's not where your body wants to go, don't do that. Find what feels comfortable while maintaining all that disc space, especially in the lumbar spine, but through all of your discs. Deep breaths in, deep breaths away. Okay. And let's release our hands down onto the ground and come into a plank. Everything's steady and stable. Still in some open chains here. Feel the long crown and tail moving away from each other. Feel the deep core. Hug around your spine, like a little airbag around your spine. Put your knees down onto the floor and find your way down safely. Take a deep breath. Don't go anywhere just yet. Put your hands underneath your forehead. Stabilize your core. Engage your transverse abdominis. Engage your psoas a little bit. And if you're not sure how to do that, try pushing one thigh into the ground. Try pushing the other thigh into the ground. See what it feels like to press both thighs into the ground. So the chances are that when you do this, you might be tucking your tailbone to do it. So see if you can lose the counter nutation. Let your sacrum mobilize. Okay, see if you can do this with your psoas muscles instead of from compressing your SI joints. Find your breath, and we're going to lift the right leg up just a little bit. And then release that leg down. Stabilize through the psoas muscles. Maintain that stability through your TA and your psoas as you lift your left leg up. So there's not a whole lot of movement when you stabilize through your core muscles. There's not a whole lot of movement. Now notice the difference between squeezing your butt and tucking your tail to press into the floor. And this may feel like, oh yeah, that gives my low back space, but you've just locked your you've locked your pelvis into counter nutation. So let's undo that, relax. Now, instead of using your glutes to find that action, let's use your core. So wrap around your belly. Pubic bone lifts towards the belly button, not from squeezing your butt cheeks, but from lifting the deep low belly muscles. Feel the front of your body, your psoas, your transverse abdominis. Stabilize there, and now try to lift the leg without squeezing the butt cheeks tight toward each other. Your glutes will engage, but you don't want to bring them into the midline and lock your tailbone. Then release and change sides. The core, the front of you, pubic bone to navel, hip bones toward the midline. Feel your psoas and your TA. Lift that left leg up. Try to keep the glute active, but the tailbone a little quieter from having to compress. And then relax and go ahead and rest. Wag your tail. Just let your hips sway fast or slow, side to side. And now we're going to find cobra pose with that action. So stabilize your pelvis, pubic bone toward the belly button, wrap your core, stretch your legs, take a deep breath in, inhale and lift up without squeezing a dime between your butt cheeks. That used to be the cue. Squeeze a dime between your butt cheeks for like dancers and stuff. So let's not do that. Okay. And then melt and come back down. Come up onto all fours. Find any freedom and movement of the spine. Play, dance through your spine. Breathe. And then curl your way and find dog pose. Once more time, find that open chain, extend. Feel the disc, spine, lots and lots of room. Walk your feet forward, bend your knees, softly bend forward, and then come on up. Find a wall or a piece of furniture and come to half dog. Feel, now we have a slight closed chain because our hands, are on something just like dog pose is a slight closed chain, but our spine is not closed. There's still all this elongation with the crown and the tail. Take your femur bones back, bend your knees as much as you need to so that the tailbone goes following the spine instead of the tailbone tucking and kind of competing with the spine. Let the tailbone follow the spine toward the crown. Breathing deeply here. And we're going to stay holding on to this. Stand on your left leg and lift your right leg up in the air. Feel that sense of space through the vertebrae. Stabilize through your core. Find the transverse abdominis. Find the psoas muscles. Try not to squeeze a dime.
but instead inner spiral that thigh in the air. Extend the spine. Stabilize the low back by your core instead of by squeezing your butt. Okay? And using your glutes is different than squeezing your butt. So you are very much using your glutes to lift your leg up. So I'm not saying turn off your glutes. I'm saying turn off them in the way that we hug toward the midline. Okay, and then release, foot down onto the ground. Bend your knees, move your spine around, wiggle, sway, and then we'll find the second side. Right foot on the ground, left leg lifting in the air. So supported Virabhadrasana 3, same action. Inner spiral the left thigh in the air, widen the sit bones, engage through your core, keep breathing into the elongation of your spine. Use your glute to lift your leg, but find the outside edges of your glute more than right across the edge of your sacrum. Find the fullness of your glute max, medius, and minimus supporting you. Deep breaths here. All right, great. Well, let's go ahead and release and find your way. Come back up, come back, wiggle around. So just like we do on all fours, find it here, maybe bounce. Breathing. And then take your feet wide on your mat. We're going to turn our feet out for Parsva Uttanasana. We haven't done anything to warm up the hips, so not a hip day today. So just have a little bit of a moment to let your hip warm up if you need it, and then place your elbow on your knee. Feel the chain on the heel, closing the chain on the heel, open chain through your crown. Feel the elongation. Notice that when you have something to move against, the foot has something, we yield into the earth and rebound through the spine. Feel the breath. Maybe your arm wants to come to, maybe your arm doesn't want to come to. Whatever works for your shoulders, your spine. Feel the elongation. Can you still lift the pubic bone ever so slightly toward the navel to support the core without rolling the pelvis into a posterior tilt? Find the neutral lumbar curve. So we're not going one way or the other way, we're neutral. Breathing. All right, and then come on up and out of the pose. Let's go to the second side. So same, if your hip, we haven't done anything to rotate the hips a lot in our practice today. So if you need a little time to kind of find your way into this, take your time. And then eventually finding your elbow on your knee and feel the elongation of the spine. Root the heel, yield through the crown. Can you feel that connection of yielding and rooting to find the rise through your spine? Maybe your arm stays, maybe your arm lifts, whatever works for your body. Are your shoulder blades dancing on the rib cage? Is your lumbar curve neutral? Are you supporting yourself, especially on your exhales, with your core strength? How can you grow your spine, your rib cage away from the pelvis, your shoulders away from the ears? All right, let's go ahead and come on up and out of the pose. Turn the feet to the long edge. Same, forward folding again. This time, put your arms where you want them. Maybe they're dog pose arms, maybe they're underneath. Okay, can you still, now gravity's helping the spine lengthen instead of, we're open chain, our head's not on something, and we're not, gravity's kind of bringing our spine away from our pelvis now instead of compressing it toward. So enjoy the sensation of lots of space. Walk the hands to the front of the mat, feet to the back of the mat, dog pose. Deep breaths in, deep breaths away. One last time, coming into a plank, holding steady. Find that deep core. Let's go ahead and lower ourselves down. So you can put your knees, your elbows down, but however you get to the floor. Back bend of your choice. So, really anything you want, but stabilize through the deep center, Try to protect the low back by the core as you inhale to extension of the spine. Exhale and melt. Neutral. Pick up your feet, rock. Okay. And then we're going to come to sit. So having something to sit upon can really help keep that neutral curve in the lumbar spine, especially if your hamstrings tend to be tight. You know, if you sit flat on the ground, so I'll show you from the side. If you sit flat on the ground and your hamstrings are tight, you're gonna, you know, your pelvis is gonna get pulled. And then here we are in this tug of war again of the pelvis going one direction and the spine trying to go another direction. So we wanna have this tilt where we anterior tilt the pelvis a little bit, nutation of the sacrum. So the top of the sacrum comes forward, the tailbone goes back, a neutral curve in the lumbar spine. Find it, stretch your legs out. Now this is a vigorous, much more vigorous pose than it appears. Lift the arms. Okay. So see what's alive. Can you feel your psoas muscles helping you? Can you feel the muscles along your spine helping you? Can you interspiral the thighs? Can you feel the neutral curve in your lumbar spine? Do you tend to round back? Do you tend to push way forward with your chest or belly? Find neutral. There's a lot of work to be had in this. Find your breath. You can always back off by backing off your hands or bending your knees. All right, and then relax that. That's hard work. Soles of the feet together, Baddha Konasana. Have the hands behind you. And now just to let the back relax, round a little bit here with our knees. So when we're externally rotated and our knees are wide, the pelvis we have just a little bit more range within our pelvis for rounding to be a healthier action in the spine. So don't worry so much about keeping the long spine. You can let your chin drop. Are you breathing? All right, and then go ahead and come back up. Stretch your right leg straight. Take your left foot in Janu Shirshasana. If your knee is unhappy, you can always put a block or something underneath you. You're sitting on the edge of a blanket, so we're in that anterior tilt of the pelvis with the neutral lumbar spine. Straps are so nice. If you don't have one, that's okay. You can just keep your hands on the floor. Here we are in a closed chain. So now we have feedback from our upper limbs to our lower limbs, and we have feedback on the floor. So the only thing left to be free is the crown of our head. So what can you do when there's still that little bit of an open chain up there to keep the elongation of the spine happening without a ramrod effect? Remember our soft curviness, remember your breath, and find your way. If your hamstrings don't like this, bend your knee. There's no reason this, I don't know if you can see because I'm all in black, but you can have your knee this bent so that when you come into this pose, you're coming here instead of having the leg straight. Now you can have the leg straight, but try not to roll back on your sacrum and round your spine and tuck your chin and come forward here. This is back to that tug of war between the sacrum and the rest of the spine. So you want the tailbone and sacrum to follow the rest of the spine. It doesn't matter how far in you go, how deep you go. It's how you go far. Lift the spine, yield, breathe. All right, and then come on up. To stretch the deep low back muscle, we're going to take our leg out to the side. Take a breath. You do not have to go far in this pose. Stretch your arm up overhead. Feel that full lateral bending. You can have your hand right behind your leg to support you. You can have your hand on your hip. Sometimes I keep my hand right there and press down and lift my spine. There's so many ways to go about this. If you can't reach, you can always put a block there and have a little pressure on the block. So just see what kind of action you want to open up those deep low back muscles. All right, and then come back to center. Bring the foot with you. Stay with the leg straight out. Cross the leg over. Hook your hand around and find a twist here.
Deep breaths, gentle. Try not to force yourself beyond where you're supposed to be in your posture. Are your shoulder blades dancing on the ribs with the breath? Okay, and then come back. 2 knees into the chest. Let yourself round. Tuck your chin. Okay, and then let's go to the second side. Left leg is straight. Support underneath your right knee if you need it with some blankets or props. Maybe your knee is okay coming down, so you just decide what you need. Lift the spine. You're having the anterior tilt to the pelvis. The hands are on the strap. Hands can be on the floor. Feel all the closed chains that you have here. Feel the one open chain you have left. Lift through the crown. Root through the sit bones. Feel the contact, if you're using a strap, of your upper limbs and your lower limbs. Plug them in and feel the lift of the spine. Shoulders drop down. Find your core. So you don't want to just fall into this pose with a lazy belly. Engage your psoas muscles. Find your deep transverse so that you have some support for the lumbar spine. And then don't go further than your body's supposed to go. There should be work along the back muscles, but there shouldn't be excessive work along the back muscles. And if you're feeling like there's too much, tuck your chin. Feel a little softness. How's your breath? Are you able to anterior tilt the pelvis? All right, come on up. Take the strap over, or the leg rather, over to the side. Find your breath. Maybe you want some weight coming down onto the thigh. Maybe you don't, and your arms coming up in the air. Find your breath. This is when, if you have a sandbag, put a sandbag on your thigh so you can do both simultaneously. That feels awesome. Find your breathing. Are you still stabilizing with your core? Okay, let's come back around again. Bring that foot straight, cross the leg over a hook. Find your twist. Be gentle in your body. Breathe in your body. And then come back around again. Knees to your chest. So now as we move into Shavasana, a couple things that you might want to try to do. First is getting your legs up. If you have a couch or a chair to put them up on, this is a great way to feel the weight of your femur bones drop into the pelvis. You might need a little bit of a back bend to counter what we just did before. So if you want to have a moment just coming into a bridge or putting a block underneath your pelvis for a breath or two, by all means do that first. I like to do that after forward folds. That's what feels good in my body, so maybe you're the same. And then as you're moving into Shavasana, I don't care if your legs are up a wall or you're half up a wall like I am, or if you're down on the ground, but try to put something, if you're flat on the ground and you, sometimes after doing some work that we've just done, you need some support underneath your knees. So if you have a blanket or a roll to put underneath your knees, that's awesome. So however you're ending up, make sure that you have the sense that your spine can be long. This is restful. And if there's anything you need, maybe you need a little rounding, maybe you need a little rocking. So if you're not settled, trust your body to tell you what to do to settle your posture. Sometimes people need forward folding, sometimes people need back bending in order to kind of let their spine settle again after deep forward fold work. So once you're settled, breathe your way here. Relax. Melt the spine. Gravity gets to melt the spine now. There's no compression above or below. It's just a spreading out. Can you let the shoulder blades settle? The arms and legs are heavy no matter where they ended up. The breath is deep and full. Allow your spine to spread out like water spreads out on a floor when you spill it. Deep, full breaths. Let's begin to deepen our breathing. Before you move, just feel the breath. One more time, feel the elongation of the spine, kind of different without gravity holding in its way. And as you start to move, perhaps stretch your arms and legs. And take a moment to bring your knees into your chest and round a little bit. Rock, squeeze, round, whatever is soothing for your back. And then let's take our time. Find your way onto your side. Curl into a little ball. And then come up to sit. So, we don't have time for a seated meditation right now, but throughout the day today, whenever you are feeling like you're in front of your computer and slumped over, or driving, or having a conversation, anytime you feel like you're slumped, it could be even when you're cooking or doing dishes or something. See what you can do to feel that upward energy. Feel it now. Feel the roots of the pelvis, the length of the spine without losing your curves. Remember to be subtle and dance inside the curves of your spine. Deep breath here. Place the palms at your heart and offer your spaciousness. Who in your life could use a little room to breathe, literally perhaps, or figuratively, who needs a little space. Just offer your space. Namaste. Thank you. Thanks for being